The first time I came to UNOH, I was blown away. The opportunities that UNOH provides.
All right, let's bring in my colleague Brett Baer, our chief political anchor here at Fox News, get his reaction to this breaking news. Brett, we saw drip, 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 37 Democrats saying President Biden should step aside, and now we've got the announcement. Your thoughts?
Mike, this is TikTok.
Let's bring in my colleague Brett Baer, our chief political anchor here at Fox News, get his reaction to this breaking news. Brett, we saw drip, 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 37 Democrats saying President Biden should step aside, and now we've got the announcement. Your thoughts?
Mike, this is a tectonic shift in politics. Think about where we have been, and in such a fast time to have changed now this nominee stepping down. It was only 3 weeks ago that there was that debate, at which point, President Biden walked out, and in the first few minutes, the world kind of gasped that was what was on stage after all the preparation he did. The fallout from that, I don't think, ever really recovered, and his effort to do interviews afterwards did not stop the bleeding as far as his political problems. And I think that there was this sense that this was inevitable, that it was going to happen, except what happened was that there was a pushback from the campaign, from the White House. You saw this effort. Now, I think there's a real, going forward. If you look in that letter, Mike, there's not a strict of Vice President Harris. There is a lot of questions. There are a lot of questions about what the process is going to look like and this mini primary kind of thing. Remember, 14 million Democrats have voted. And for all you heard former President Trump on the stump the other day, they say I'm a threat to democracy. They're going through a situation where they're going to come up with a different candidate than 14 million people voted for. So expect all of that back and forth. But the next thing that I think you're going to hear is that if he's stepping down as the nominee, how can he continue to be president for the next 6 months? And I think that that's part of the discussion you'll start to hear, at least from Republicans. You've already seen J.D. Vance and others bring that up.
And we've heard talk, Brett, if there's going to be a mini primary now that he is stepping aside, or whether it's going to be a coronation for Vice President Kamala Harris. What about that?
Yeah, listen, the mini primary thing is it's a false nomer because you're not going to have actual people voting. If anything, you would have different forums around the country where people would throw their hat in the ring. Maybe they make a certain bar of percentages or money, and then they have a discussion, and then it's decided, it would seem, in the convention by delegates, Democratic delegates in the convention in Chicago. So, it's not a primary in essence of voters voting. It would be Democratic and, delegates, and it becomes, I heard Dana Perino say, back in the vape-filled rooms of Chicago, that you maybe get a nominee. I think, it's going to be a fascinating process. I think that the overall sense that Kamala Harris may be the one that gets the most benefit initially, but it's not clear, at least from this letter, that he's throwing his support behind her.
Well, and I played some sound from UVA professor Larry Sabato last hour, basically saying that there are rules in the Democratic rules that allow for delegates to vote their conscience. And so if there's not a clear-cut nominee going into the convention, we could be looking at really an unprecedented situation, no?
Yes, it could be wide open. The superdelegates can vote how they want on the second ballot, but and Democrats have a lot more leeway than Republicans as far as that process on voting on different ballots. But nobody thought it would ever get to this. Conventions, as you know, are mostly endorsing factories that are designed to tell the narrative. We have never seen an election like this where one side, the opponent, has an attempted assassination a former president, attempted assassination just, 6, 7 days ago. And then the other side has such a horrific debate performance and the fallout from it that his party abandons him. And, it wasn't just the 37 Democrats who spoke out. There was a whisper campaign, as you know, in Washington. And more importantly, the donors had left and the money had dried up. So it became untenable. The question is, what happens to this presidency, and is there pressure on that aspect of it as well?
Because if he were to turn it over to Vice President Harris sooner than later, give her an opportunity to be president for now, presumably that may give her a little bit better of a chance in November. I guess, obviously, we'll see where the polling goes, Brett.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it doesn't sound like this letter he's stepping down. It sounds like he's leaving the nomination. But it raises all kinds of questions about world leaders, how they look at this situation. This is a very unstable, tumultuous time for our country, and we've got to get all the way to November and a vote. One side of the political spectrum is really up in the air right now, and there's a lot of people probably rethinking what they may have been doing at this moment.